Audra, welcome to Living Corporate. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Zach?
You know what? I am doing okay. We were talking off mic about just a lot of things kind of happening. It's funny, I got these two little kids. I feel like between Houston weather and a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, there's always something popping off. You know what I'm saying? There's always just something going on. But I'm
Yeah.
okay. I'm okay. Look, so here's the thing. I don't really know where to begin because we've talked now for some time. We met, I believe, last year
Yes.
for the first time, really, through a recommendation from a mutual person that we both dearly respect. And there's a lot I want to get into. I guess I want to start with, and I guess, well, backing up, when I think about the landscape of employee experience and people strategy and org transformation, I think there's a lot of people who are in my generational cohort, like who are young-ish, and even people, and certainly people who are younger, like in their mid-20s or so, and like a lot of really big, loud ideas, right? About how the landscape of DEI should be and how, we need to do this and we need to do this. And I don't really know if we're always engaging and talking to folks who really have the privilege of experience to really see some things through some various cycles. And so I get excited when I'm able to talk to executive level leaders about this space and this work, because I think a lot of times for folks under 30, they bring a lot of energy and excitement and even some innovation and creativity, but we don't have the experience. And I'm not under 30, by the way, I'm 34, but I'm just saying we don't have the experience and insight to really speak to these things with the in the most effective ways, right? And so I love bringing in diversity of generational cohort as well, right? Because there's something about someone who's been in this space for more than a decade, more than 15 years, really talking about what they're seeing. And so when I first pulled you up, did my research on you, the first brand I saw associated with you was Korn Ferry, right? I go to Korn Ferry's website and I saw you there, position, senior executive thought leader, wealth of experience. I think, like, let's just start there, right? Like, what is it that led you to Korn Ferry? And then I would like to understand, what is it that led you to build something outside of Korn Ferry? Let's start there, and then we'll continue forward.
Okay. Let's start there, but I'm still going to back it up once.
Back it up.
What brought me to Korn Ferry is that the organization that I worked for was acquired by Korn Ferry. Korn Ferry was in the executive search business. Huge global organization that did executive searches at high levels in organizations across the world. Probably about 15 years ago, Korn Ferry made a decision that they wanted to really build a diversity of solutions to serve their clients. So they expanded outside of executive search to build a leadership advisory practice. So they looked around the country and looked at organizations that they felt had expertise and had capability, and they acquired them. Our company was one of those companies. At the time, it was called Global Novations, and it was the largest diversity, equity, and inclusion company in the country. Now, how did I get to Global Novations? You can back it up through a series of one small boutique company called J. Howard and Associates that was eventually sold and became part of several boutique companies called Provant. Then it was bought back and then took on the name of Novations. Then it merged with its competitor, Global Lead, and became Global Novations. So through all of the important thing is that through all of those changes, the work around creating environments where people can do their best work no matter how different they are, as well as if you see yourself as part of a demographic that most people would say is different, you don't allow any of the messages that sometimes comes with that interfere with you being able to soar. So one of my favorite expressions is that one hand does not clap. So organizations have a responsibility to create cultures where people can grow, and individuals have a responsibility to grow. You got to have both those working at the same time.
So to your point about joining Korn Ferry through acquisition, and they're really to what I'm hearing is there being like a series of acquisitions and then buybacks and things of that nature. What was your experience in going through that? Because I've been through on the other side, right? So I've been a part of like M&A consulting engagements, right? So like where I would be a part of like taking data and analyzing to understand, okay, hey, here's where your potential areas of risk are and synergy and X, Y, and Z. And as you think about, as you progress in this merger, here's the things you need to be mindful of. But I've yet to be a part of, I've yet to like go through and experience a full act. So what was that like just experientially as a professional to be like, okay, hey, I'm part of this DEI firm. And now I'm hearing that this executive search firm was looking to really add us as a nodule to their toolkit of sorts. What was that like for you? And then, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm really curious about that because not only that, but like I said, it's not based on what you're saying. It sounds as if like you experienced that several times over, and yet you were a constant through it all. So what was that experience?
Well, what allowed me to be a constant is the power of the work that I did every day. And I was able to do that up until the day I left Korn Ferry. So that helped feed that constant. But one of the things, and I think, Zach, you said it well, when you're on the M&A side and you're looking at the data, it's real easy to say, like you just said, these are the risks. This is what you can get out of it. This could be great. You might be careful of this. But what happens is that if you're not careful, you take the humanity out of the M&A. And humanity is, and people, that's what it's all about. That's the number one item on anybody's payroll is going to be, the number one item on anyone's budget is payroll. So when you do an M&A, you have to, no, let me step back. I would say most organizations, when they do M&A, do not spend a significant or an intentional amount of time understand how they're going to integrate cultures. And to me, culture is very aligned with when you're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What do I feel when I walk into a space? Do I feel like I belong? Do I feel like I matter? Do I feel like I'm included? From the interview to the first day, to the onboarding, to the first year. I'm constantly, the thing that's fascinating is that we are born into a group. A group is two or more. All of us have had wonderful group experiences, and we've also had bad group experiences. So whenever you're stepping into a new space, one of the things you're trying to figure out is this going to be my home? Is this going to be a place where I can truly make a difference and make an impact? Is this a place where I can grow? Is this a place where I can achieve my goals and objectives? Is this the place? So I'm trying to figure that out. And I'm looking for cues in the environment that's letting me know, oh, I think this is it, or, oh, this is a red flag. This is something I need to be careful of, or this is just great. I can work here for the rest of my life. So, but you're processing all of that. Sometimes you're processing it on a conscious level, and sometimes you're not. But the important thing is that I challenge managers when they talk about having people in their organization that really they're lazy, or they don't step up, or they don't bring it all to the table. I said, is that how they were on the first day? I said, probably not. They came in excited. They came in wanting to give everything they could. They came in and they wanted to make a difference. What caused them to slow down or give the appearance where you could say they're lazy? Something happened, and it's usually in the culture.
You know, it's interesting to your point about culture and experience as pertains to just leaders and how they're engaging their employees, and also what employees are looking for from their organizations. You know, right now, like we're in this season where, you know, so look, maybe it was my own naivete, Audra, coming into the corporate world now 13 years ago. I was under the impression that layoffs were like a last resort when an organization just simply cannot, you know, it's not viable. It's not tenable, right? The layoffs was like the ripcord you would pull. And again, that was back in 2011. Perhaps I was wrong back then. Or, you know, maybe that wasn't all the whole truth, but it felt like that. Today, I would say that it seems like layoffs are really just part of, like, they're just like another business lever that one pulls as a part of generating or maintaining shareholder value. It doesn't seem as if the idea of, and I'm not so naive to think that companies have ever been loyal to employees. So I'm not going to even say that, right? Like, where did company loyalty? I'm not saying employee loyalty go. Like, I'm not, but it seems as if folks are just getting like just cut left and right. It also, I mean, the data would also show that, right? I think it's been like 60 or 70,000 layoffs this year across all sectors. And then like in tech, I think
it's going in both ways. I think loyalty is disintegrating. So where you used to have one person who would work for a company for their entire careers, you now have your generation, and the generation behind you is saying, there's nowhere in the world I'm going to stay somewhere for no 15, 20 years. I might not even stay there a year. So so I'm stepping into the organization, not expecting to stay. And the organization is building an organization where they may not need me to stay. So you're getting an interesting dynamic where the whole fabric around having the constant, as you described me earlier, is being eroded. Now, let me give you an example. When I was with the company that he was part of the merger and change over time to eventually be with Korn Ferry, the executive leadership team, which there were 4 of us, all African American, we hit a lull and our business plummeted. The first thing you would think to do is, we're going to have to lay off people. We knew we needed the people. We just hit a lull. So as an executive team, we made the decision that we would go without salaries because we did not want to lay off one person because we needed them. So we went several months without salary. Now we got it back in time. But going back to what you said around being a place of integrity where people, even given the realities of the different generations, being able to be in a place where you can develop, where you can grow, where your ideas are heard, where you feel like you again matter, you have value, you're included, you're going to keep them there a lot longer than people think they're going to stay there when they first come in. How many stories have you heard when someone said, oh, I came to this company and I'd only thought I'd stay here for 2 years. I can't believe it's been 15.
100%. What you're also describing, though, I mean, this goes into the question I was going to ask, which is just, where do you think executive leaders need to like adapt their behaviors to retain talent? Because on one side, and it's also interesting, and there's like this duality of just executive leadership behavior I find just so curious, where there's still a very quiet war for talent in the market. Like, people are still out here looking for top talent, and at the same time, they engage in behaviors that would suggest they don't care about keeping the talent they have or retaining the talent. And so something you just articulated, though, and maybe this is because the organization is small, I would love to see an executive leadership team forego their salaries for a certain period of time to maintain, to ensure that they were able to retain their employees. But I think even the notion of that is laughable to so many C-suite executives.
Well, one of the things that you will constantly push up again in terms of our social order is that of capitalism. And at the end of the day, it's green. And you, especially for publicly traded companies, you have shareholder value and you need to make sure that value stays strong. So you're constantly doing the things that you did when you were in professional services. You know how it works around constantly cutting and thinking but my concern is when you take the human element out of it and you just see it as black and white on a piece of paper and you don't give it attention to the fact that we're talking about people here. And to at least have the conversation. You can still make any decision you want to. Because, see, I was telling people when they're talking about Audra, I can't include everybody in everything. I said, I'm not saying that you got to include everybody in every meeting. What I'm saying is that you give everybody consideration. Mm-hmm. I can accept yes and I can accept no. I really can accept no when I know you've given me consideration. What causes me a problem is when you don't even consider me or you don't even see me.
Right.
Before our time here, I had a friend who had to stop by and pick up something here at the house. And she was livid when she pulled up because she was just coming from the grocery store. And the way she was treated was like they didn't see her. And they treated somebody they did see that looked like them, just gave that person all kind of attention. And she finally had to say, excuse me, and then they jumped. Well, see, executive leaders need to understand that in 2024, especially with 5 generations in the workforce, you need to attend to people. Again, I'm an adult, and I'm also an at-will employee. I can choose to leave you, and you can choose to tell me to go. Mm-hmm. It's a contract. Mm-hmm. However, there are things you can do that will increase the probability that I will give you my best and I will stay for a while. Mm-hmm. And if people could just understand that they could achieve their goals way beyond they could ever imagine. If one of their key strategies was the development of people, all people, no matter how different they are, they could take that to the bank.
You know, you talk to your point in calling out capitalism. I mean, I think I still very much so would love to see a world where we really reimagine our systems, right? I don't believe capitalism, certainly this like hyper late stage, hyper unregulated version of capitalism that is in America. I do not believe it's sustainable. I think there's mounds of evidence, both anecdotal and qualitative and quantitative, that would point to that fact. I think my other challenge is like something you even articulated about the story with you and your executive leadership team foregoing your salaries. It's not like you forgoed your salaries forever. You said, and we got it back. So we got it back in time. So like it was still a capitalist model. It just wasn't reactive and short term.
It was a responsive model. It was not a reactive model.
Yes.
And we got it back relatively soon, but we did go several months.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so this idea of, I think to your point about like shareholder value, I think what spooks me and honestly, sometimes I think it might just outright discourage me is it's like a bunch of quarter to quarter decisions made to just get ahead or just whatever. And it's like, man, where is the longer term view and strategy? And I believe that has poisoned in certain ways the well of employee experience, because the whole idea of like, you know, multi-year succession planning or different types of developmental plans. I remember again, like earlier in my career, I was part of building out this career laddering program. And so this was for an energy organization. So it was like, okay, hey, this person's they're going to come in from this college and they're going to be an engineer 1, and they're going to go through this program. And in 3 years, they're going to be an engineer 3. Then they're going to be engineer 7. They're going to have an option to then to cross across like a lattice and either become like a department head or a manager head, or become like something more specialized as an independent or individual contributor, but like as a specialist. And I don't know if like the way that we're doing business, like in corporate, like in major organizations, even allow for that level of intention and forecast, because I don't know if organizations are looking at their own business with that level of patience and investment.
And I would, and so to that point, I just want to push you on that a little bit, Zach.
Push me.
Let's take what you just said and let's throw it out the window. Mm-hmm. It's not about engineer 1, and then 3 years later it's about engineer 2, and then 4 years later it's engineer 3. At least that one you can see, but there are so many roles out there that you can't build like you can the engineers. What if we didn't focus in on title, but we focused in on skills? Mm-hmm. We want these kind of skills represented in the first 3 years. Then we need to maximize these kind of skills. I really think that we need to really push out on skills building and build capability around certain areas. So, for example, we are seeing that in 2024, command and control as a leadership style is no longer effective. You can't just come up to somebody and tell them this is what you're going to do. Boomers accepted that. Your generation does not. And the one coming behind you really doesn't. So the thing that you have to do now is to say, how in the world, given our current reality, given the hand we've been dealt, how can we maximize in some of these fractured systems? How can we still maximize? Because it's only until we can maximize can we begin to build a different system. But one of the things that Gorbachev said a long time that I agree, he said you have to join to lead. So any system you're in, when he was in parliament, he wanted to take down the Berlin Wall. It took him 10 years because it was so political and it was such a symbol that he had to work relationship after relationship after relationship. And then 10 years later, that wall came down. So I say that to say that in order for us to build the system that you just referred to, that would be great. We have to find a way to manage the existing system and work within it, so we become more pragmatic about the ways in which we're going to bring it down and build something else back up.
And I think that goes back to what we kicked off with, which is I hear a lot of people, especially those who are like in the quote unquote DEI space. And I think there's a spectrum, and I've talked about this on Living Corporate several times. There's a spectrum of DEI where it's like, I think there's like this, on one side, there's like, it's like really revolutionary in its language and in its, like citing a lot of revolutionary thinkers, perhaps like folks from like, the Black Panther Party, Kwame Ture, really looking and a challenge to reimagine and rebuild. And then there's another side where it's like, hey, we really want to just maintain and keep everybody in order. We don't really necessarily want to like push the envelope, make anyone uncomfortable on any side. And certainly we don't want to challenge any power structures. And I think like on the aforementioned side, I think a lot of times people really focus on this needs to go away. This needs to be taken down. We got to take this down. We got to dismantle this and eradicate this. And it's like, Okay, but like, how does that happen practically? Like, that sounds very compelling. It sounds exciting. It sounds provocative. But when you talk about these institutions that have been around for hundreds of years, how do you really think that's going to happen? How do you believe that we're going to make progress? And I'm not saying that, you know, certain things just need to change. Okay. I don't believe in like everything being a steady, slow drip of progress. However, agreeing with you that some of those things you have to actually be a part of, learn, engage, and then push for reform as you're in it. And that's hard. That's not easy to do. Plenty of people lose their way, but it's a much more likely option than rallying and just kind of shaking your fist and saying, we got to change everything.
Well, to me, you talked about language, you talked about thinkers, but one word I didn't hear come out of your mouth, Zach, is impact. Mm-hmm. So we can do whatever we want to do. We can say whatever we want to do. We can write the best this or that. At the end of the day, what kind of impact are we making? What kind of impact are we making for our organizations? What kind of impact are we making for society? What kind of impact are we making for our communities? What kind of impact are we making for our families? Impact. See, because that's where it is. And the thing about it is that I just keep going. I just think this is a time of pragmatism. I just think we got to sit back and say, where are the fissures and where are the cracks that if we go after them, we can get a return on investment and spend our time there. Because I have to tell you, I'm tired of going through so many meetings. I go to a lot of conferences. I'm in a lot of meetings. And at the end of the year, and I look back, I say, okay, what difference have we made? Mm-hmm. What difference have we made?
Well, you know, and I'll say this, right, is, you know, for about a little less than a year, almost a year, I worked at an organization called Diversity Inc., right?
Diversity
Inc.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with it.
And so it was interesting because, so that was a new experience for me because I'm coming from consulting, then I go into tech. But I'd been engaged in diversity, equity, and inclusion work, employee experience, org transformation work. I would say I hadn't sat on the commercial side of it before, right? Okay. So I'm doing consulting, and I'm thinking through, okay, how do we deliver? But commercial in the almost like the theater of the work, right? Like, and not to be disrespectful to anybody, but like, it's a different type of space. Hey, you're on this list. Hey, we're saying that you did this. We're saying we positioned you here. We're doing events, not necessarily like impacting anything per se, right? A lot of awareness, perhaps, high level communications, but in terms of like transformative impact work, not really that. And it was interesting because then I was able to like see, and like then because I was sitting on that side and the people behind the curtain, how much business there is in selling events to tickets to go to Martha's Vineyard or whatever conference or dinner or gala. And yep, Common is there, or yep, Trevor Noah is there, and you're able to take a picture with like these celebrities, but it's almost like a lot of self-aggrandizement, right? It's not really, to me, impact work related to just, okay, what are we actually doing to move the needle? And part of me, Audra, is like, part of me is like, look, a lot of the folks in this room are Black and brown. You know, for a lot of us, this is the way that we were able to get into corporate America and have a well-paying job. We might not have a C-suite position if it wasn't for this role. We might not be able to go to this event we might not be able to go to this city or go to this state if it wasn't for our connection to our job. So this is the way that we're just getting on. So like, I want to empathize with that. And like, if this is not and historically I've taken umbrage with those things, and I still do. But I think my point in this conversation is not really about that. I really I'm hearing your word pragmatism. And just being critical of, okay, what are we actually doing to progress?
That's right.
Right.
Because one of the things with being on the design team for the Martha's Vineyard Chief Diversity Officer Summit that's coming up in August on the Vineyard, we're working really hard to create a design where the theme this year is "The Future is Now. Are you ready?" And what can we give the CDOs that can help them and support them in making an impact? Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that when I go to conferences, people are not refueled, because I think for many they are. And our conference is a thought leadership conference, but it really is, at the end of this day, what can you offer or give that will increase the probability that people will go back and make bold moves?
Yes.
That they will make strategic moves, that they will make pragmatic moves.
Yes.
I didn't sign up to become a CDO to maintain the status quo. I really stepped into that role thinking that I was going to be able to make all this change in this organization. And it doesn't take me too long to realize that I'm not.
Right.
And that the status quo is going to prevail. Now I'm in a position of just saying, oh, I'm just getting along, and I'm not really moving the agenda at all. But I've accepted this. I got the title, I got the money, I got everything that comes with it, except I have no influence.
Right. And I never sat in a CDO chair. Right. So in corporate, I was a manager, and in consulting, a manager is, I would say, like the equivalent of like a director in corporate. And then I went to industry and I was a director. And I, sat right next to the CDO. And we would have conversations, when I pivoted from consulting to industry, large tech company. And I fully can empathize, like, with the position of a CDO, where it's like, they oftentimes come in with high expectations and hopes of, I'm going to be able to change this, mobilize this. After all, there's chief in my title. So I should be able to mobilize. And then you realize you don't. Couple that with the shared frustration, and maybe potentially feelings of, you let other folks down because there's people that look like you in the organization, extremely junior to you, expecting you to do more, just like you expected to do more. Right. And so, like, all of that I can empathize with. I think, there's a real reality to your point about generational, this generational diversity, that millennials and Gen Zers are becoming increasingly disillusioned, I believe, with the CDO role and any, frankly, like culture, people role, because they're looking at this person or looking at this position, right? We don't have to personalize it. They're looking at this position that is supposedly sitting right, and as far as they know, Audra, they're sitting right equal with the COO. They're sitting right equal with the CFO. They sit there right equal with the CHRO.
Yes.
And
that's the appearance.
That's the appearance, right? And we can drop T right now. Like, the reality is, most CDOs most chief diversity officers are not chiefs, right? Like, that chief role, there's legal implications to being a chief officer in a company, certainly and especially in a publicly traded company. But the truth of the matter is, like, functionally, and sometimes even on the org chart, CDOs are really like directors, right? They're like sitting, they have some semblance of authority, but they don't have their own budget. They're sitting under the CHRO. A lot of them aren't reporting directly to the CEO, or even reporting directly with the COO, which would make it more strategic and operational. Like, they're a lot of, and that's not shade to the person having that seat. That's the structure oftentimes of these roles. And yet outside looking in, and outside also meaning the employees within the company, they go, oh, wow, we got somebody who now we can go and run and talk to, and they're going to make things happen. Just like if you were to reach out to a CFO at your company, you should believe and trust that they have some semblance of authority, frankly, a lot of authority, to make things happen by excising some of their capital. CDOs, not only do they not have always the organizational capital, the professional capital, like the actual, like, to the ability to do that, but then their social capital is radically different, right? Mm-hmm. They're there at the good. Now, of course, all executives and all CDO, all chiefs are, and people are there at the good pleasure of the board, and the CEO, but CDOs are really there at the good pleasure of other leaders, right? So anyway, I know I'm talking a lot. You said something. I wanted to drop the T, but I'm curious, like, what is your perspective on the position of chief diversity officers and like where they're positioned versus what power they actually have?
Well, I think you've shared a lot, Zach, around the whole notion of influence, power and influence, and being able to make an impact. And do you really have that seat at the table? And is your voice as powerful as that CIO or CMO or CFO? Are they truly your peers and your colleagues? Are you being appreciated or are you being tolerated? So again, you're stepping into understanding the culture of the organization. And then now, where do I fit in? Now, I've had clients say, and you're starting to hear the rhetoric around this. It's going to be interesting to see if people move in that direction. And they're saying, well, you know what? Do we really need a DE&I office? Maybe we can just embed DE&I into the business. Mm-hmm. Until there is a pulse beat in an organization that demonstrates that it truly believes that development is for everybody and the systems in place to put that in, I would not put it in the business units. Because many leaders, see, the thing about it is dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion is one of the most value-laden areas to have to deal with. There's no other area. When you deal with finance, you're not dealing with people's values. You're not dealing with the fact that I am from a very religious household, for example, and I grew up saying that homosexuality was wrong. And now I move into a world where the treatment of everyone is important, especially the LGBTQ community. Mm-hmm. So how do I manage the conflict of how I was raised with what my current reality is? Mm. And so you're pressing up against values. And that's why, even though we are becoming stronger around data, I tell people all the time, when I started this work 40 years ago, at the director level and above in corporate America, most directors were white and male. Today in 2024, it's still the same thing. Mm. So if you're going to change or move the needle, if you're going to change the percentages, if you're going to create more inclusion, it has to be intentional work, and it has to be something that people feel that they can value and they see the return on investment. And so until we can get there, I'm still a proponent of being able to have a DE&I office and a leader that will drive that, because that's the only way you can hold people accountable. You just turn around and put it back into the business unit. It'll go back in, but is it going to be a number? Where is it in terms of priority?
Right.
But more importantly, even with the data, where is it in terms of value?
We've been using the word pragmatism. You brought up data a couple times now, and something we talked about off mic and that I get excited about is leveraging data in an effective way. I do believe that data and pragmatism go hand in hand. I believe that
I would agree with that.
I would say that when you think about, as I think about basically, from 2020, from George Floyd's murder to mid 2022, a lot of the things that were getting DEI practitioners in hot water was frankly around things that were not data centric. So it was workshops where we're using academic language that wasn't really grounded in a corporate context. So you say things like dismantling white supremacy or confronting your privilege or white, you talk about white guilt. And so using a lot of psychology type language, in addition to just language that is provocative without really being like explicitly relevant to your day-to-day work. Like anytime I think about people who point to things and say DEI is bad, it's something like that, Audra. It's not like, it's nothing that I've ever seen anyone point something like a strategy. It's always like, hey, look, we had this workshop and this instructor said all the white people need to turn to a black person and apologize. This instructor said, this instructor said, the CEO is a racist and that's why everything is, and that's why, and the company's going to fail. And it's like, okay.
Well, see, the thing is, Zach, when I started the work, it was just, well, it really wasn't even diversity. It was affirmative action.
Right.
Then it shifted to diversity. But it didn't take us too long to understand that white males did not see themselves part of the diversity. That whole body. They didn't see themselves as participating. And inclusion came in. And so that was something they could put their arms around. And if you think about it, equity has only been it was D&I forever. The E only came in after George Floyd was murdered. Mm-hmm. It's only been part of the conversation over the last less than 5 years. Mm-hmm. And it came in with a roar. And I got excited about it because at the end of the day, equity is important. You know, sometimes you do things to support certain groups so that they can level out the playing field. There's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But we, you know, not the constant, but the whole piece around, see, I learned a lot around values. Because you logically know it's the right thing to do. I can sit here and tell you and give you the numbers and you say you are absolutely right. But why can't I make a move on it? And see, I think that's because it touches those values. And we can't ignore the politics of what's going on in this country. And that there's a strong push by a significant number of people to make America white again. I don't think as a dear friend of mine said, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's out.
No, it's a mess. It's funny you say that.
It is a huge mess. However, we're not going back to the 1950s.
No, we're not. And here's my thing, right? Like to that point. First of all, your toothpaste in the tube reminds me. So my 18-month-old, she gets into everything. She grabbed some toothpaste recently, squeezed it out, and then said, "Uh-oh," and tried to push it back in. I said, "It's over, man. You did it. It's out. It's out there." You know, a couple things when I think about. So I struggle with this in terms of I believe that effective data analytics and visualization and consulting against that said data is the pragmatic lever that's going to engage one of those cracks and fissures to your language earlier. At the same time, and well, before I say that, and when I say that data analytics, I mean not just counting heads and saying, hey, your representation in this space is lower and your representation space in this is higher. And here's like your turnover by this rate, but like connecting employee experience to customer experience. So saying, hey, you said that one of your strategic goals is to engage this particular region. Okay. Here's where your performance has been over the past 3 years based on this historical data. Here's where you're trending to go. By the way, this correlates with your employees who have this level of sentiment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to drive better engagement in this market, increasing your revenue, increasing your market performance, you need to also make these adjustments with your talent and your people. Like, I believe that is a compelling way to consult and to create change. However,
go ahead.
However, I also reject this notion that companies only care about making money. And to your point about because values can extend beyond making money. So you said about, hey, we don't want to go back to the 1950s. When you think about like segregation was expensive. Like segregation was expensive. You think about like pools. I use this example all the time talking to people is like, if we were purely capitalist and like in terms of, hey, we're really just focused on money, then there's a lot of things we just as a society wouldn't do because we can make so much more money by being inclusive. That doesn't mean that you don't have to privately hold very harmful ideas about people, but you would make a lot more money being inclusive. So you think about pools. So Emery, baby, I'm doing a live stream. You got to go downstairs, baby. It's okay. Go downstairs. So I got my 4-year-old. She's sick today. So, all right. So pools, so pools, you had the black swimming time, you had the white swimming time. And in between each swimming time, they would drain the pools, wipe it all down, fill the pools back up, drop the chlorine tablets in there, and then let the white folks come in. That's like a lot of money, right? And time. Imagine if one had just left the pool be open all day. You'd be so much more profitable. And so but the benefit and the value of power and control supersedes or trumps, pun intended, the desire just to make money. And so I think about that often. I think about that example often. And I think about the idea of the unwillingness to share power and the unwillingness to see other people that may not look like you succeed, and that being a real impediment to enterprise growth, because that's where those values are.
And it is. But see, the thing about it is, if I feel like you're taking something that's mine, see, we wouldn't have to clean the pool if I truly believe that I was dealing with all people.
Right.
But I was dealing with inferiority of one group compared to the superiority of another group. Mm-hmm. So because that transcended everything, then I had to empty the pool for one group and set it up for another. Because I can't have this group falling behind. I mean, it just wasn't going to work. So you're absolutely right. But so your thinking around the data, I think, is rich. It's spot on. It's appropriate. It is compelling. It helps people to see the current reality. But by itself, it's still not the answer. You still got to couple that with, now what is it going to take for us to be able to do succession planning for who's going to become our next CEO? And it might not be a white male. Are we okay with that?
Right. I mean, so there's all these folks pushing the great replacement theory and, hey, we're trying to get immigrants to come in here and and the browning of America. And like the data shows that like the country is going to be majority minority by like, I think it's like 2050 or 2040 something.
It's going to be there.
Yeah, it's going to be there. And so then like and that's a reality that one has to be mindful of when you talk about business. Hey, succession planning, listen, this target demographic that y'all built y'all's coming around, hey, they don't exist anymore. Or hey, this demographic, they're going to shrink by 12% in the next 7 years. This other demographic that you have underserved is going to grow by 18% in the next 4 years.
That's compelling.
Right? So what are you now going to do? How does your leadership team need to adjust to that? That means that, literally what you said, that means that maybe our next executive leadership team needs to probably be majority Black and brown. Is that something y'all are comfortable with?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then and that's tough. That's a real conversation.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what I call it exactly that. The real conversation.
And I love that. And that's why we have you on Real Talk Tuesdays. Look, now I told you I'd respect your time. You know, we're coming up on it. First of all, there's just so many more things I would love for us to talk about, but I want to do a part 2 because I'm really passionate about, you know, you giving me so much of your time, and I thank you for that.
You're more than welcome.
What I would like to say, before I give you the last word in terms of just, you know, things you want to plug, where people can learn and find out, but I want to say thank you. You know, I think kind of having we're going to have an in-house conversation outside the house really, really quickly. I think that there's generational tension within Black professionals, often between baby boomers and millennials / Gen Zers. I think that baby boomers have had their own experience, which is like Black baby boomers oftentimes being like the trailblazers, the first in line, or the first people to break through that ceiling to get to where they're going, and having a ton of knowledge, then not always being the ones to reach back. Then also, I believe on the Gen Z / millennial side, a lot of arrogance, angst, chips on their shoulders, and unwillingness to really sit down, listen, and learn. And I can say that I'm so encouraged, and I walk away from all of our exchanges, both in this conversation, but off mic as well, feeling empowered. It feels and affirmed. And so I just want to say thank you for lifting as you climb, for sharing your time, for sharing your insight, for sharing your wisdom. And I really appreciate that. And I hope that people listening to this podcast on either side of that generational aisle can pick up and glean something from this conversation, because I certainly have been blessed by engaging, and I learn something every time we speak. And so I just want to say thank you for that, Audra.
You're more than welcome. And one of the ways that I can represent what you just said was a group of colleagues, dear friends. There were 11 of us, and we were in Washington, D.C. And we went to a wonderful, I think it's Busboys and Poets, or Poets and went to a wonderful restaurant in D.C. Mm-hmm. And we were sitting there, and we were laughing, and we were talking. And again, we're all boomers. And across from us was another group, and they were probably millennials, maybe a couple of Gen Zs, but for the most part. And they were laughing and they were talking. And right when it was time for us to go, two of them stood up to go to the restroom. And long story short, they had been watching us as much as we had been watching them. And they were saying, we hope we're going to be like that when we get to be their age. And we were sitting up there saying, oh, look at them. They look so good. They're going to be just taking over the world. And so we all ended up hugging. We walked outside together. We took photos together. But at the end of the day, it really is about connecting, community, bringing your best to the table so that 1 + 1 = 3. And how do you, in the best way you can do that? Because if you said, Audra, if there's one thing that you would recommend that executives do, or if it's one thing that you would recommend that Black and brown talent do, what is it that we needed to do? Well, for the executives, they need to listen. If you will just listen, people will talk to you. But you got to listen from the perspective of wanting to really understand what you're looking at so that I could help you run your business better. And I had a chance to sit in on a fireside chat with Marvin Ellison, who is the chairman and CEO of Lowe's. And he said the two things that you do, he talked about the 2 Ps. He said, always be prepared and always perform. He said, that's if you have to talk to me about what has guided me through my whole career. He said, I'm always prepared and I always perform. And that's evident by how successful he is at Lowe's. So I'm going to end with the 2 hands. You got to clap. Takes 2 hands to clap. We each have to own ours if we want to maximize the outcome and get the greatest return on investment, if that's it. And organizations, if they want to be smart, It's sitting right in front of them, but many of them can't see it because of their own subconscious biases, their socialization. All of that gets in the way, and then you got to start moving that stuff out.
Audra, thank you so much. Mic drop at the end. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
And
until next time.
Until next time, we will talk soon.
Okay.
Peace.